Alright, check it out. So I got 4 Samsung Dynaflat CRT TVs and 1 Samsung remote. Hit power. As you can see, they all turn on. It's pretty cool, huh? Alright, what's going on, guys? So my name is PO17 or P017, and I wanted to bring you a really neat video, not just talking about CRT TVs, video monitors, and the sort, but talking about the brands of CRT TVs and whatnot. So in particular, the first thing we're going to be getting into is probably one of my favorite brands, and this is mainly going to be a video just talking more about my opinion on them, how they do, how they perform, and what to look out for if you're going to be looking for one. So without further ado, let's go ahead and start on the Samsung Dynaflat line of CRT TVs. Not to confuse them with the Samsung SlimFit TVs, they're not the same thing. So, what I mean by that is the Dynaflat line of TVs are a really neat set of tube TVs that came from the early 2000s up to the mid to late 2000s when CRT TVs were getting phased out. But overall, their main defining feature, being a Dynaflat tube, is the fact that they are flat tube. As you can clearly see, the more I get diagonal, the more you'll notice that it's flat. Now, to some people, that is a bit of a downside, but in my personal opinion, I don't really care. In fact, as long as the picture looks really good, that's all I'm really caring about. So, when it comes to these sets, there were many different versions. So, for example, the ones that I have down here, this black one here is a TXL1491F. The one above it is a TXP1430, so these are both 14-inch tubes. This one here is a TXR2435, which is a 24-inch Dynaflat. And then this one is a special one. It is my TXR2678WH, which is a Dynaflat HD 16:9 aspect ratio wide CRT set. So, which is really neat. I'll get a little bit into that later. But overall, some of the unique features that these Dynaflat sets have, besides just the flat tube, is the fact that a lot of these sets, in my personal opinion, based off what I have seen, tend to have really, really, really good picture. So they have really good geometry, really good convergence. I'm really surprised at how well that the red, green, and blue colors tend to line up really well on the screen. A lot of the times they have very sharp picture image, so you get a lot of scanline effects on them. They have really good audio. They're really easy to service, actually. Surprisingly enough, getting into the service menu for these is pretty neat. And there's just a wide range of these tubes. So as you can tell, from my 14 to my 26-inch there's a whole bunch of different tube ranges for your needs. So if you need something HD, you can look for something like this. If you need something standard definition, depending on the size, you can look anywhere between a 14-inch to even up to a 32-inch set. Now, the Dynaflat line is really interesting because it doesn't just consist of TVs. It even consists of computer monitors. So, for example, the Samsung Sync Masters, such as the 955DF, which stands for Dynaflat, or even some of the Dell monitors had Samsung Dynaflat tubes in them, which is really neat because it just covers a wide range. And because they use the Dynaflat technology in the computer monitors, these tubes in particular benefited really well because of how good they are. So we'll go ahead and take a look a little bit closer at some of these tubes. So as you can see here on Kirby 64, the Crystal Shards, just the 240p image on this is just fantastic. It's super sharp, has really good defined scan lines. Down here on the TXP1430, it's also really good. It does have very minor scan lines, but for a 14-inch set, that's surprisingly good for its type. Now, in terms of input compatibility, everything like that, so all these have a different range of inputs on them. So if you need to look for anything that's just pretty simple and basic, down here you can get composite video. However, this particular model, the TXL1491F, seems to be able to be RGB modded, which is really cool. The TXP1430 above it has composite and component video, so that's really neat. So a lot of people like having small sets with a lot more inputs than just composite in it, and personally I recommend S-Video, but component's really nice too to have for these sets. This one in particular has composite, component, and S-Video as well, so this is all three, and this one has composite, S-Video, component, and even HDMI, which is really cool for an HD set. Now, there is a little bit of a disclaimer involving composite and S-Video that I'll talk a little bit about later, but for now, let's go ahead and talk a little bit more about some of the other things about these sets. So when it comes to serviceability, that's another big one for me because I like to service a lot of these tubes. In fact, I like to service all my tubes. So getting into the service menu or just being able to adjust them even if it doesn't have a service menu is another key feature that I like to look at. So every single one of these tubes uses pretty much the exact same remote. So you can use this remote here to get into the service menu. And what you would do, you would turn off the TV first off, but then you would hit mute right here. You'd hit, oh, there we go, mute, 1, 8, 2, and then power it on, and your service menu should pop up. So every single one of these has a very different range of adjustments. So the older ones typically have a little bit less adjustability, but something like my TXR 2435 and my TXR 2678 have an incredible amount of adjustments. You can do so many adjustments to these things. Geometry, linearity, horizontal and vertical size and position. It's just an endless amount, pin cushioning, everything like that. So these sets in particular are really good. The smaller ones, not as much, you could say, in terms of adjustability, but they still look pretty good. So overall, I really like these sets for their picture, their serviceability, their audio, just everything about them, man. They're just so freaking good. However, there is a bit of a disclaimer, and I'll get into that now. So we'll talk a little bit about this one, because this one's the special case, given the fact that it is a Dynaflat HD set. So there is a wide range of inputs that you can get in terms of resolution for these sets. So for example, these are Dynaflat standard definition, so 240p 480i, same with this one. This one's a Dynaflat HD set, so this one will do 240p 480i, 480p, 720p, and 1080i, but with an asterisk around that. Now, why do I say that? Because this particular set that I own is not a dual scanning set. This one will only really do 540p and 1080i. It won't actually do 240p, 480i, or 720p natively. So what it'll do is it'll upscale the image, it'll line double the image, so anything like when it comes to like Nintendo 64, Super Nintendo, you don't want to run on these sets because you're not going to get that prominent scanline effect, as well as it's going to introduce some input lag due to the scaling and digital processing of the image. So these are only really good for HD consoles, I would say. So now my Nintendo Switch is a great example of that. It's an HD console. PS3 and PS4 work really well. My PS3, in fact, serves as my Blu-ray player for this TV to be able to watch movies on, because movies look really good on this TV. However, for anything Super Nintendo and down, you want to run mainly right here. So standard definition, whatnot. There, of course, is enhanced definition as well, which is really neat. So what I mean by that is the Dynaflat line, there is a specific tube called the Dynaflat ED, or enhanced definition. But yeah, overall, those are just some of the things that go over with some of these sets, with some of the disclaimers, everything like that. Now, when it comes to downsides, because I do want to talk about this, especially if you're looking to pick one of these sets up. These sets are not very well constructed internally, so externally they look fantastic. Their tubes are really good, everything about them is really good, but they just fall a little short when it comes to the quality compartment of their components, so their capacitors, their, their coils and everything about them. So for example, this particular set, my TXP1430, did have an issue with horizontal size being squished, and that was due to one of the coils on it failing, so I had to fix that. And that was just one problem out of a lot of others that I've seen on some of these sets, which is why some people tend to not like these Dynaflats, because they don't have a good experience with them. Now, I've always had a great experience with these sets, so I've always liked them a lot. But you want to look into some of these issues, especially if you're looking to pick one of these up. So, for example, you want to look at the horizontal sides to make sure it's not squished in. You want to make sure the screen is at a proper center position. You want to make sure that, you know, everything looks good on the TV to make sure that it just doesn't look off in any sort of way possible. All the colors are right, the picture looks sharp and nice, it's pretty bright, all that sort of stuff. So, disclaimer, like I said, these capacitors in these tubes, the coils in these tubes, aren't really the best. Especially if you're a person who likes to service these sets, it might be pretty nice to actually work on, surprisingly enough, because they are pretty simple internally. But you do want to make sure that you're looking for a tube with with no issues whatsoever. And it applies to any tube, like all my other tubes that I have here, like my big Sony Trinitron. You don't want to be stuck with a broken Sony or any sort of other set. So just keep in mind with these, just pay attention a little bit more when it comes to these sort of issues. There's not really any other issues besides that, honestly. I mean, I guess another issue is the fact that a lot of people overlook these sets, so there's not as much documentation on them as I would like on the internet, but that's more of a personal thing. However, if you want something that's really good, has a really sharp image, looks pretty, just, oh my god, get one of these sets, honestly. If you can find one that's in good condition, pick one up, because it will be awesome. I personally recommend these 9 times out of 10 over a lot of other Sonys that I see consumer set-wise, just because of how good they are picture-wise, especially when it's in good condition. So, just be on the lookout for them, because they are really nice sets. So, without pretty much anything more to talk about, yeah, we can end the video here, I guess. So thank you a lot for watching, guys, and that's just me talking about these Samsung Dynaflat tubes. Like I said, don't get them confused with the Samsung Slim Fit tubes, which are a lot worse than these. So yeah, just be aware, and especially if you're picking one up, I do highly recommend this brand of tubes, as long as they're in good condition. So thank you a lot, guys, for watching. If you want to see more, please leave a like on the video, talk to me a little bit more about your experience with these sets, and I'll see you guys in the next video. And in fact, I'll leave you off with something pretty neat. Okay, well, the bottom one didn't turn off, but there you go.